I'm Kira Scrivener, and today I'm going to talk about authors I fell in love with 2020. I did this on Spur in 2018, and I love this tradition. I love talking about authors that I just had no plan to read, and I fell freaking in love. So these have 4 authors. They are all female, and I fell in love with all of them. So first of all, they have to be authors that I read multiple books or series from, so that it's just not like a series love, it's an author love. So first we have Jacqueline Woodson, and first of all, I read Brown Girl Dreaming, and this was so incredible. This is an autobiographical memoir from her early life, and it begins with 1963 and talking about where Martin Luther King was, and looking at all of these things, and it looks at where she is in regards to the world. And I don't think, the thing is, the more you're in love, the more you have hard like articulating how much you love something. And this was Jacqueline Woodson. I just adore the way she writes, and just placing it in verse, but where she is in the world, and where everything else is, especially as a young Black woman. And it covers her into 10 or 12, and it's so evocative and so amazing. You just need to read it, even if you don't like verse, even if you don't like contemporary or historical fiction, nonfiction, however you want to drawn. And then we have Another Brooklyn. This takes place in the 1970s and deals with coming of age as a Black woman, and how there's a more sinister side around assault and violence and faith and all of these things, and losing your mother. And it's really evocative again. And then we have Before the Ever After, which just wrecked me. I have 8 minutes probably of me sobbing that I just had to take out, and I have a vlog where I'm just this was probably just one of the most, I can hear the tears, emotional books for me to read ever. It deals with CTE, which is a book, which is a condition that happens to people when they have a lot of concussions. And it deals with a football player, and it's around 2000. And his father is in his early 30s, but he's slowly becoming erratic and losing his memory and forgetting all of these things. And he just doesn't know what. He's a 13-year-old boy. And when I was a teenager, it was considered if I had it, because I was starting to have a lot of health issues. I ended up having fibromyalgia, but the depiction of uncertainty and chronic illness was just something that I'd never ever seen in fiction. I've seen things, representation of illness, but the uncertainty and the disbelief and the stigma around things that you can't explain physically, I never feel more seen. And I hope one day there'll be more books where I'll feel even more seen. But the emotions of it, and the evocative, and the strong friendships, despite the fact that it's 2000 in a group of junior high boys. Jacqueline Woodson is just those 2 roles solidified me as a favorite author. Then we have Shirley Jackson. I started off the year with reading We Have Always Lived in the Castle, which deals with 2 sisters. The rest of their family was killed, and this is horror and environmental horror. And we have a man coming into their house who is a relative and kind of taking over it. And I don't really know how to describe it without giving spoilers, but it's the spooky, unsettling sinisterness of it. And then we have The Lottery and Other Stories, which was so incredible. I adore them. The Lottery is her best known work, but it's not the one that I loved the most. The beginning book, The Demon Lover, will haunt me forever. I don't want to give it away, but so many short stories. It has a book about racism in small towns, and it was written by a white woman in 1949. Not that that's extraordinary, but it's wonderful that we have representation for that. And it deals a lot with the sinister and the horror of everyday life, where things don't look like they're bad, and everyone's being polite. And if you know what happens in the lottery, you understand that. And she deals with these things that seem mundane but are sinister, and I want to write like that. Then we have The Haunting of Hill House, which I reread twice. I read it myself, and then I read it to my roommate. I have a live show on Kate's channel, and it's such an emotional book that deals with, I love Eleanor Vance, I love Theodora, I watched the TV show. I love Blind Manor more, but it's a very interesting, well done TV show. Then we have Daphne du Maurier. Rebecca. I adore Rebecca. the way that it talks about childhood and growing up and like the uncertainty and but the eeriness, like the atmosphere of it, I adore the way that she writes. And I wanted to stop every sentence and just write down, because the writing and the psychology of the character was so dang good. And then I also read My Cousin Rachel, which was super good, and this deals with a man who his cousin, who is his guardian, who's like 20 years older, goes off to Italy because he's sick and has arthritis, marries their cousin who's not related, like his cousin on the other side, and yeah, and then dies. And he's trying to figure out if she's bad, but then he meets her, he's not sure, and it's like, how did he die? And all of these things. And I love that Daphne Maurier writes characters that are so complex and so morally complex, and their motives. And also, I watched the trailer for the Rebecca movie, and it made me shriek. So don't watch that and think that's what Rebecca is. And then last, but certainly not last, we have Yaya Gazazi, who wrote Homecoming, which is an intergenerational story about these two half-sisters who is Ghana in the 1700s, and one of them is taken in as the master's wife, and one of them is a slave in the prison. And it was really hard to read. It was terribly hard to read. The graphicness of it, but it's also really necessary. And then we follow their descendants until the mid 2000s, where we follow them and the story of how intergenerational trauma and how in the US and in Africa, colonization and slavery has changed the world, in how have a better understanding of why just because things are better, racism and the systems of it are still relevant today. And then we have Transcendent Kingdom, which is a book about a sixth-year PhD student working in behavioral science, and she's working on addiction and to understand why rats keep on going for things that are addictive to it. And it's and she looks back at her childhood and growing up and her family, and how immigration changed her family, and how addiction changed her family, and racism, and how she looks at religion now, and how the difference between science and religion and personal faith and all of these things. Yeah, I was supposed to be more upbeat, but then I got super emotional. I can't describe completely, because when you love books, it becomes really hard. But I hope you understand more why I love these books so much and these authors so much, and why they are now like must-read authors for me and favorites. And let me know who some of your favorites are, and I will see you very soon. Bye.